if you had $1 million, what would you buy first?
What would I buy first? A second machine.
Hola, Pato.
I just don't think I am really made out for city life. I think it's too much stimulation every day coming from every corner. It's just people, noises, signs, posters. Your brain is just constantly picking up so many external factors. And I just feel there's no time to just come down and reflect or kind of be more mindful with what you're doing or with the people you're with, or it's too much going on constantly, and I find it really hard to wind down. And for me it's really important to have just this sense of peace.
Yeah.
And or just to have somewhere to kind of retreat. And not growing up in like a city environment, it's weird for me to know as soon as I step out of the door, I'm already in public view. It's not like at home I step out and I'm still in my garden and it's still peaceful and nice and safe. And
Yeah.
I just feel actually it's not the way one should live. I feel like I've aged 10 years since being here.
This city will do that to you. So
Yeah.
would you say that your takeaway more than like with Berlin itself is like the you've had the big city life experience and you've kind of understood that is not for you, no?
Yeah, it's more just it's just not the lifestyle that I want. I love everything the city has to offer. I also love all the things that I hate. Like it's still an like part of the soul of the city. It's kind of entertaining sometimes. It's
That's by the way how it traps people.
Yeah.
When you question yourself and go like, why would someone choose to live like this? It's because there's a pride in having like a fucked up lifestyle, you know, and overcoming the obstacles and kind of making your life uncomfortable.
But
Which is
I
dumb
think
as fuck.
it is dumb, and I think I've also kind of constantly fallen back into that cycle.
Yeah.
But every time I go home, and then I realize like, God, nature is so nice and peaceful, and people just on a slower pace. There's a lot more room to like build community and friendships, and people to be just friendlier and more aware of everyone and to help everyone out. And I just think the way people treat each other, it's not so self-absorbed and individualistic.
Yeah.
They're definitely more aware of everyone else around them, almost like there's more empathy.
Yeah.
And I treasure that.
Do you think is maybe due to the fact that you don't have that falling back onto anonymity? Anonymity, is that a word? But in the big city, you know, it feels like you don't know your neighbors. You're not supposed to know your neighbors. Who the fuck am I, a weirdo? And I think that like not taking responsibility of the relationships that you have contributes to the fact that every man for itself. And
Yeah.
talk to me about, because you know the way you describe the last few weeks in Berlin, or rather months in Berlin, it resonates a lot with me, with how I felt when I left Barcelona. There was this sense of everything, my entire life crumbled, and I realized that it happened because my happiness was based on things that could crumble that fast. And by the time I had made the decision of like, well, I think I build a life that is not a real one here, is, you know, it doesn't fulfill me.
Yeah.
Things started to get better, but I had that same feeling of I don't want to fall in this trap. I'm convinced at some point, as soon as I can, I'm moving to Berlin. And I was wondering if you had a similar feeling when you left home, but it feels like you were never that fed up with South Africa, or at least with like the life that you had there, right? How different was the experience of like packing your life and moving from South Africa compared to now calling the Berlin chapter of?
I mean, I think it wasn't, I didn't have too much time to process the whole thing, because the job application was a very like, oh, let's just try and see what happens. And it ended up to working out. And then I bought my ticket and I was here 2 weeks later. So it was 2 weeks in which I kind of had to process everything and pack everything. But
I forget, like the rush was not so much because of the beginning. So for people that don't know, the job offer was a junior position as a tattooer at Unicat.
Yeah.
And you and I spoke after you applied, and I think the rush was because we feared that borders might be shutting down, right? That's
Yeah.
what forced you to be so fast with that decision.
And technically, they were. I was on a reparation flight, so it was only like German citizens that were allowed to fly over to Germany. And luckily, I have a German passport, so that worked out on my end. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely weird, but nothing really was chasing me out of South Africa.
Today's episode is brought to you by Skillshare. Skillshare is the online learning community that's helped millions to learn cutting-edge skills, network with peers, and find new opportunities to launch their careers. Skillshare has tons of classes on things like illustration, video editing, marketing, graphic design, and social media, just to name a few. And they all range in level depending on how much knowledge you have on each subject. Most of the classes offered at Skillshare are under 60 minutes, and their catalog is always growing with new premium classes by top-tier teachers, including a few celebrities. Sign up for Skillshare and start learning today. And as a special offer for our listeners, you can now get a 30% off your annual Skillshare membership by clicking the link in the description below and using the promo code annual30AFF. That is promo code annual, the number 30AFF. Today's episode is also brought to you by Printed Mint, a new sponsor of the show with a new ad read, so bear with me while I try to power my way through these. Printed Mint is a print-on-demand company that specializes in dropshipping. If you're like me and you don't yet know what that means, it's essentially the most comfortable way of running your merch operation. Printed Mint allows you to choose from over 300 products that you can personalize with your own design and add to your online store. Once an order has been placed, Printed Mint takes care of printing it for you. That way, you don't need to invest in a huge inventory and take any unnecessary risks. Oh, and the best thing, Printed Mint doesn't have an order minimum because they understand that you have to start somewhere before you can grow your business. But that's not all. Printed Mint also takes care of packaging each order with your custom branding, stores the order for you, and even ships it directly to your customer. And if all this isn't enough to convince you that Printed Mint is one of the best print-on-demand companies out there, the cherry on top of the pie is that 75% of their workforce is female. I mean, come on! Say goodbye to all your headaches, not only of printing, but also stocking, storing, and delivering your products. Visit printedmint.com or use the link in the description below.
But yeah, it was completely a career move. And I think I also had a bit of a drive to take my work to Europe, for example. But I think I also just needed that time in my life to live somewhere else besides South Africa. I mean, my mom and my dad, they always pushed me like, go somewhere else, like do something. And I was always like, oh, but I like it here. But yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit? I know it was a very difficult moment. Historically, it was very weird circumstances that surrounded your job opportunity was at a time, and I think that like everything is connected. The fact of the lockdowns and the pandemic hitting so hard, I think contributed to the fact that Unicat ended up downscaling, and it went from having 2 studios to basically only 1, which made a lot of the available positions kind of be off the table. So it was all very challenging and very strange circumstances in which you kind of took a giant leap of faith, you know, due to an opportunity, and all of a sudden you were on the airport, and that opportunity seemed to be kind of off the table, but you anyway went ahead. Talk to me a little bit about that feeling of not knowing if you just made a genius move or the worst decision of your life.
Well, again, it was super spontaneous, and I remember sitting at the airport in Johannesburg, completely empty, because it was just like the small group there about to fly. And then I got an email, and it was you saying that you were leaving, and you were the one who, kind of got me here and wanted me to join. And so I was it was right before I was going to board, and I read this email, and I was like, fuck.
Did I forget if I reached then separately directly to you, or you only got it through the official announcement that I was leaving my...
It was the official announcement. It was to everyone. So yeah, I think I was kind of about to board the plane, thinking, just, do I still have a job? And then when I got here, I think it still took another month or so until I actually started working at Unicat. And
Did you and I meet before that?
yes,
Okay.
before I started, yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, because we got you some
We got
cubes
some supplies,
yeah,
and we
yeah.
also met at a cafe before, and for the first time, and had a chat. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was going through your head at that time? Were you feeling like this could be a giant mess, but it's gonna be an adventure, and I always have a place to fall back to? Or did you feel like something inside of you that told you, like, for some reason I feel like I will be all right?
I think honestly, I didn't know what was going on or what was going to happen. I just remember having this drive, like, whatever happens, I'm going to make it happen, you know? Because everything was kind of a bit up in the air with Unicat. Basically, as soon as I got there, the whole structure changed, and I was part of these meetings of changing the structure. And so to me, it wasn't like something was changing for the studio, because it was all new to me.
Yeah.
But it was the first time that I was part of a proper studio. So it was like a bit exciting at the same time. But I think the thing that calmed me down the most was, as you said, I applied for the junior position. So I would basically still have someone to teach me and mentor me. But then you left and the structure of the studio changed. So I think the fact that we had met beforehand, and you helped me to buy my supplies and show me how things are done at Unicat,
Because I could do the first day training with you, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
And basically, like, you just kept saying that you are still here to mentor me and be there when I have questions or so I always knew that, like, you were there if something.
Did you because I remember having that concern, like, she doesn't know who I am. She doesn't know that I truly mean it and that I'm gonna be there, and there was no way I could convince you, I could show you that was a reality without it getting weird, like you just had to take my word for it, and everything sounded like this is not gonna happen because you just had a kid, you're in another studio, you have, like you kind of like ended the relationship to this studio. So it was like, I know that logic dictates that you're on your fucking own, but trust me when I tell you that I'm gonna take care of you and that I feel responsible of you being here. Did you again have the feeling like, oh, there's something, even if it defies logic, telling me that he's sincere and that this is gonna work out? Or you were like, but even if it doesn't, like, let's take this as a crazy adventure? And
I mean, I was definitely down for a crazy adventure, but at the same time, you showed me through your actions that you meant it and that, like, you kept showing up, and I could also, like, phone you and chat with you when you didn't have time to meet up. And so that, for me personally, just people showing up and not just talking but also taking action, that's something that I really value and something that shows me that I can trust you. And again, from the beginning, from when you were still part of Unicat, like, you were the one whom I was like drawn to, where I was like, okay, this is the person who is who sees me, who sees my work, and who will value the stuff that I do. So this is the person that will kind of be in my life, whom I can go to, and who also knows the ins and outs and the people in the industry and the city already. So it's not that I'm completely alone. I have, like, network.
yeah.
Yeah.
And throughout these few, because I have the feeling, I have the memory as if these would have been a long process. I think probably you were landing in Berlin, what was it, like September? September?
I landed 1st of August.
1st of August.
Yeah.
And then I think in November there was another lockdown, and it's when I left with my family and my newborn to down south. I got the hell out. And so by the time I think December rolled around is when the offer for the space at Hiragana was really on the table. So probably by the time you and I were already talking about the possibility to come join us, we had already established that report. So probably I had already enough time to prove you that I really meant it and that I was there for you and whatnot, right? But if I don't remember, like, I always thought, actually, even before I had the name, I knew that, half of the team at Unicat would join the studio. I knew that in a hypothetical studio you would be a part of it, but I think from all the people that I talked to, you were the only one that I was not yet, like, super upfront with the fact that there was something getting lined up, because I wanted to make sure. I know it now in hindsight, it doesn't make that much of a difference, and especially from outside, people don't give a flying fuck about that. But for me, it was very important that I would not go shopping around someone else's residence. So I would kind of wait until people told me that they wanted
Yeah,
to leave.
because I came to you and then you told me. Yeah.
And it took a fucking lifetime, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I had almost like 3-4 people already lined up, with like a few more in talks, until you probably had the confidence to tell me, like, I don't know what's out there, but I think I need something new, and we finally had that conversation. That was like the most dancey conversation that I've had with you ever in my life, because it is like, I think you're saying what I think you're saying, and I have something, but I don't want to say it before you say your thing, and it was like, no, you say it, no, like, you say it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were also still quite like new within our like relationship.
Yeah.
So it was very like
And tell me a little bit. So I don't remember. Probably by that time you were kind of already transitioning into like the more French cream approach to your work. Tell me a little bit. What were you coming from before that? Like when you and I remember you and I talking not so much about what you do or what you did, but what you could potentially do.
Yeah.
What things had you been like toying around with in terms of style before moving to Berlin?
I mean, the industry in my city specifically,
Which is Durban, right?
Durban, yeah. It's definitely it's getting better now. But when I was still there, I find that it was a bit behind. Kind of like stuck in the early 2000s, I like to say. But obviously you still have incredible artists in the city. It's just I find that people, like the clients specifically, aren't quite aware of what's possible with tattoos nowadays, and so you don't get niches, like a niche in tattooing, or people who necessarily support it. It's really hard to find that client base. So my work was more focused on custom work. And I actually started out with fine line work. So I kind of started out with 3 round liners and mainly botanical stuff, because that's what was bringing me the bread. So it was mainly flowers, many flowers, and I would have like breakfast with my family in the morning, prepping my design, and they would be like, "Oh, what are you tattooing today?" Flowers. I'm like, shut up.
Did you have was it exciting just because you got to tattoo them, or were you already starting to get kind of annoyed of having the one subject matter?
I think I had like my own little private studio for like 2 years, I want to say. And I mean, in the beginning, it was terrifying to tattoo, but then it was so exciting. I really loved it. I put a lot of love into the space, and it was mine. So I did everything from the cleaning and stock and tattooing and taking care of the clients. I didn't have a fucking stencil machine, so it was always by hand and cramping hands. Like everything was blood, sweat, and tears. I hate hand stencils. But yeah, I mean, it really was definitely passion. And I loved the fact that I could just tattoo people, and I was definitely, I feel I was connecting more with my clients back then because it was custom work, and I felt like I could read them easier and connect with them through this work and their stories behind the tattoos.
There's so much groundwork that by the time you actually get to start the tattoo process, you have already almost a friendship, right?
Yeah. And also I'm inviting them into my home. So it's a very like personal, sacred space, and my garden. And So yeah, it was definitely love for the art of tattooing, and then I started getting more into Instagram, and I saw what people were doing over here, and I was like, that is so interesting, because I'm kind of getting sick of doing flowers. I'm growing a little bit tired, and look what's possible. Then I found people like Savadio, for example, and just the use of textures and the use of space and composition, and I was blown away by what is possible. But I knew very little people would be interested in such work in my city, which is still like pretty conservative in a way, I'd like to say. So yeah, I grew tired of it.
Where does the, because I remember when you and I spoke, you had kind of like two lanes on the table, and there was the floral lane,
Yeah.
which in a way kind of brought you to Berlin for
Yeah.
the first time to guest, and you got good feedback from it. And then you had the symbolism and kind of like
It's
a
like more
witchy.
esoteric.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Was it like you got your horizons expanded with Instagram and discovering these people, but you went, well, there's no chance that I even dip my toes into expressionism. Let me do something that could potentially be revolutionary enough for Durban, but maybe not as like edgy.
I think like the floral side of my portfolio was definitely more of a showing a skill set.
Yeah.
Like these are my technical skills. And then the more esoteric stuff I was doing, I wouldn't say that it was even done for Durban clientele.
Yeah.
It was just something that I wanted, like a different approach that I wanted to take to tattooing. And hopefully people would bite on it in the city. A few did.
But you were ready to have to guest to get that work done,
Yes,
right?
like by then I was already traveling to Joburg and Cape Town, Stellenbosch, doing a bit of work there. But unfortunately, I was kind of getting like a name for my floral work, and I was kind of wanting to die down on
Because
that.
that is interesting. I want to talk in a minute about that, but it's almost like harder to double down on what you really want to do when you're getting a name on
Yeah.
the thing you want to leave behind, right? And so tell me, how do we go from that exercise that I think it was your first attempt to kind of world building? How do you go from that into really attempting texture, falling in love with French Criminal, and being one of the first like 10, 15 or whatever artists that really, I don't know, like rescued and restored the 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 genre into the forefront and brought it together with gesture driven lines and expressionism
Yeah.
and whatnot? How did that process kind of work gradually?
I think with the esoteric work I was doing before, I was having a bit more fun drawing up designs that wasn't so focused on like flowers, for example, but more on like objects like vases and
Yeah.
objects
And the settings kind of
yeah,
started,
more
right?
of a composition or a
Still lifes,
scene.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Characters also.
yeah. So I also introduced more faces, and
Yeah.
I mean, growing up, faces was my favorite thing to draw. But tattooing it, I was like, oh my god, what if the pupil's gonna be like a little bit to the left? Or
Yeah.
I was always too scared. But I mean, I got over that. I think the French crim stuff came about more during lockdown. Lockdown was really intense in South Africa. You weren't allowed to leave the house at all. No sale of alcohol, cigarettes. One person was allowed to leave the house to get groceries and pharmacy, and that was it, and back. And you were not allowed to leave. And that went on for like 6 months. So for for 6 months being at home every day with the same people, my family, I just, you have to establish a routine. And so I just kind of established a bit more discipline in, okay, what do I want to do with my work? How do I want to push it? Because I'm bored of the floral and the esoteric stuff is interesting. And I was still mixing that into the French prison stuff. But yeah, I was just kind of building more of a discipline with just drawing every single day.
Yeah.
And as I said,
What's the timeline on that, Kat? Is that like after you had already moved to Berlin and then you went back?
This is before. This is beginning of 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is towards end of 2019 and then into 2020. And so yeah, I was just drawing every single day, and I came across the French prison page where they were posting all these photographs of the inmates with their tattoos, and I thought that they were really fucking beautiful and not like traditional tattooing. They had a different flair. They were like distorted. They were like wonky, had different textures, and scenery, and I really kind of fell in love with this world. And so from that, and from like seeing what artists are capable of doing with tattoos, I just started to dabble around a bit with designs. And yeah, I think it kind of just grew. I started drawing more and more of the subject matter that's involved with French crim, and I got the attention of people who were doing that or who were loving that scene.
Yeah.
And so I
Now
just
talking
kind of
about artists or clients?
artists,
yeah.
definitely artists.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just kind of like falling deeper and deeper into this scene and learning more about it, and kind
Knowing
of focusing all my work on it.
That it was not a local scene anywhere. You were all connected only through Instagram
Through
or
Instagram,
internet,
yeah.
right? Like at that point, I feel like none of them had been physically at the same studio probably ever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. And how did it feel to kind of know that you're part of something bigger, and that there's this new wave, and that people are still like feeling that you tapped into something that is, a few months, if not years ahead of the curve when it comes to tattoo aesthetics?
I mean, I find that when I was doing more the French crim designs and posting them, wasn't tattooing them, lockdown, still in South Africa, I was gaining more attention online with my work. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
People find it interesting, but
Do you think that the fact that you were not able to tattoo them at first gave you like a freedom of just drawing and designing without really putting the tattooer hat and kind of simplifying things, because this is gonna be a nightmare?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Like sometimes people ask for my first designs, and I'm already like dreading.
Because
I'm already like, I'd message them and say, cool, but we have to simplify it. I have to change it up.
Yeah.
Because I know it's not that I can't execute it as a tattoo, but it's just not going to heal the way that I
Age.
want it to heal or age. But for your question, I think I wasn't aware of what I was getting myself into. I only really understood the what you mentioned, like with being part of this movement and one of the few people bringing it back. I only really realized in in one of my first meetings with you when you actually pointed it out to me, and then I was kind of like, oh shit, I didn't
'Cause
realize.
at the time I had the feeling I was kind of not alone in the world, but there were not a lot of people that had that sensibility with lines and textures, but they were not evolving into abstraction. Everyone like that was doing black work and at some point got too interested in textures and the flow of lines and whatnot would slowly abandon figuration and just go to abstraction. And I knew for sure, like, no, I'm staying here, but that doesn't mean I don't want to have fun with textures. And I have an expressionist approach, and I kept on calling it, for lack of a better word, that I was doing like illustrative expressionism. And I had the feeling like you were headed the same way, like, oh, I'm, getting all these new techniques and tools into my repertoire, but I'm definitely not shy of making tattoos that look like tattoos. And I felt like that was really powerful, right? Like you have a very not conservative, but a very classic idea of what a tattoo should be and how it should be placed and how it should work and age and heal and whatnot. But you're not biting for the narrative that lines need to be fucking perfect and solid and whatnot. And I feel like this is where I kind of thought that you and a few others were groundbreaking in that regard, because I think I came from developing my own identity and universe and whatnot, and you were really trying to combine things into creating a new genre, which is now, after I've had like my years of artistic self-exploration, is almost like now I'm walking backwards and I'm trying to deconstruct how a genre is created. So all this sounds great. I remember that you got like, of course you were new in a city, you had to make a name for yourself, so things were moving a little bit slower than you would have wished for when it comes to appointments and whatnot, but you definitely got the attention of everyone in town, tattooer wise, so you knew you were onto something. When do you decide to kind of walk away from all this, from your community, from the praises, from the bookings, to really go much deeper into what your untapped potential is?
Today's episode is also brought to you by you. Well, not really, but it could be. We have finally launched our very own Patreon, so you can now become an official sponsor of Hola, Pato. We've set up different membership tiers so that our supporters can help us with as little as $1 for every episode. These will not only help us a lot, but it will also allow you to enter exclusive giveaways and gain access to our Discord. Now, full disclosure, we don't yet know how Discord works, but we'll figure it out. If you can afford a bit more and pay around $5 for every episode, you can join the next tier and become an official sponsor of the show. Sponsors will be credited in every episode, and on top of that, they will have all the benefits of a supporter plus exclusive discount codes for upcoming merch drops. And last but not least, those of you who are really invested in seeing this show grow have now the chance to subscribe to the top tier and become a producer. Producers will enjoy all the benefits of a supporter and a sponsor, and on top of that, they will receive exclusive behind-the-scenes updates and will be able to send feedback and suggest topics to make the show better. Head now to patreon.com/holapato or use the link in the description below. Choose your tier and subscribe to your monthly membership so that you can start enjoying all the cool things we have ready for you. Once again, head to patreon.com/holapato and become a part of our flock, aka La Bandada.
I mean, there was a lot of the genre growing, and a lot of people, doing like the stuff that I and many others were doing, and a lot of people kind of like, let's say, like copying the work. And I think I was just, every time I went onto my feed, I was just kind of seeing the same stuff over and over again. And I think I just grew a bit, I don't want to say bored, but
Unchallenged by it?
yeah, maybe I wanted to like push my work a bit, see what was possible. I wanted to, like, as we've discussed many times before, there's like this side of you that's the artist, and then there's a side of you that's like the tattoo artist. And I feel like I was focusing too much on being the like tattoo artist, and I wanted to put more of the artist side of me.
Do you think that had anything to do with you being new in a city with a scene and you having to make a kind of like obtain acceptance from the tattoo scene in a city, or was it because it was kind of a new sense of identity, the fact of like, well, now there's no doubt that I'm a tattooer, and you embraced it too much? Or was it just falling victim of just the routine and the bookings and not having time to do other artistic practices? What do you think that made you kind of the tattooer Kat absorb?
I think it was definitely a mix of the two last ones. So just kind of being like bored and overwhelmed with and repetitive with everything, and just with wanting to focus more on the artist. And I've also through the lockdown, many people were painting more instead of tattooing, obviously, and that really, I think, inspired me a lot as well. And I think I wanted to tap in more with that. And also, I find it really important to have different mediums to work with and experiment with, and let influence you and your work. So the tattooing, I didn't want it to get too monotonous. I wanted to, expand a little bit, push it. I guess see what was possible.
You know, the crazy thing about your generation that is so different to mine is that there's so many talented tattooers of my generation that one day grow bored of what of the glass ceiling that they've created for themselves when it comes to creating imaginary rules and things that can be done and cannot be done, even when it comes to the aesthetics. And then they outgrow these glass ceiling, and then they think that the only answer for them to really tap into their full creative potential is by walking away of tattooing and just focusing on painting or sculpture. And in your case, you guys know that you need a little perspective from tattooing. You focus on something else, but then the answers that you get in that new medium, you go back and apply them into tattooing, because you don't believe that there's any rules. You don't believe that there's any things that can be done and things especially that cannot be done in tattooing, and that is all an agreement between two consenting adults, and for as long as the other person understands and vibes with your vision, that anything can be tattooed. So what I think is the most interesting thing for people to kind of relate to of this whole process is not only identifying which are the triggers that perhaps let you know that you have to stay honest with yourself, and that when you're not so engaged as you used to with your work, you need to change some things. But talk to me a little bit about the feeling of almost having the world punish you for trying to be honest with who you are. How did you go through the waves and motions of self-doubt, or maybe not even self-doubt, but almost like the world doubting you and you staying strong and convinced that what you were doing was not only the right thing to do, but the only thing you could do?
I think something that helped me a lot in staying stubborn with my decision is I had a chat with an old family friend over Christmas, and he has known me since I was really little and always knew me as like this little rebel and fighter and fighting for what was right and, and doing like protest art when I was a teenager. And he
Cute
kind
emo
of
cat.
yeah, he kind of like sat me down and was like, so what are you doing to change the world? And I was like what are you doing to like drive your work? What are you doing to benefit others? And I kind of just like sat back and I was like, oh, I don't know, man, but I really want to tap back into being more artistic and working on my art and expressing like my world and not a world that already existed and reinventing that. And so that kind of like pushed me, and I want to go back and be like, Ben, I did it. Like so I think I felt really like inspired, and I felt really driven just to kind of start with, okay, so I want to work more on my artistic self, and so I need to start now. So I just started drawing again every day. And I knew that it would take time to experiment a little bit and develop a style or kind of like a pattern that you see in the work so people can recognize it as yours.
How different had to be the process of drawing? Because I imagine like the French cream would always start with kind of finding like treasure hunting, right?
Yeah.
Finding the reference and then reworking it, like bringing it up to speed and whatnot. And here was probably like, do not get close to any reference, right? Because things need to come from within. How was that? Like getting...
It was hard.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I think especially drawing when I was a kid it's easy kind of as a child. You just like think of all crazy shit and you put it down on paper. And then when it comes to like classic tattooing, old school, the French chrome stuff, you just taking something that exists, reinventing it, putting your own twist to it.
Which is a science in itself. It's
Yes.
not to undermine it, but it's
No,
a
no, no.
completely different...
Absolutely, it's just a different approach
to
drawing up your work.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have this thing of having a reference or having something solid that exists, and I knew like it would sell, you know, and really having to kind of work on channeling your own creativity. Like what do I like? What aesthetic? What kind of line work or textures? Or it was really hard. Like it really felt like I was breaking my brain to try be creative again in that way. So it was really having to be very disciplined with just getting up and drawing every day for like, I'm hungry.
I think I've had that. I want to say that they don't register when your stomach growls. It doesn't register on the microphone. I'm not sure that will not register. We wrap up soon, I promise. We'll go for that.
But where was I? I was just getting up and drawing every day for like 2 to 5 hours. So I think in the first 2 months or something, I already drew up like 100 designs or something.
Crazy.
Just to try.
How important was to stay clear of references, or were you at the same time that you were drawing, you were making a little research and trying to?
I was really staying away from tattoo reference, anything with like tattooing. I was tapping more into like going to the flea markets and buying art books from like classic painters like Chagall or Beckman, Max Beckman.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that work. Like it was more with the color palettes and the brush strokes that I really loved. But I think that came more into the painting than the tattooing. I was really staying away from reference and drawing more from experience. So like the one day I was at Mano, the bar, and there was this dude who was like high on something, and he kept like stomping his feet and touching his face the whole time, and I was just like, whoa. And I went to
I need to move out of this fucking city.
and I went to the cafe the next morning and I had coffee, and I was so like jittery from the coffee, and I kind of felt like my feeling at that moment related to the guy like touching his face the whole time. So I drew like this lady with crazy hair and hands coming out of her hair and like touching her face and her body. And so it's like it's things like that. I just see something related to something super small within myself, and then just kind of try come up with a drawing. But I don't think too much about it. I just kind of start and see where it takes me.
Now, you know what you have is good. You know what you have is you 100%. You come all excited like, hey people, this is me now. What's the reaction? And what is your reaction to their reaction?
I think, again, like with the French prison, it's more of a positive reaction from tattooers than it is from clients. I think that a lot of the clients need to firstly get used to it and also need to see it on skin before they commit to having it done, which is always a bit of a challenge to find the people to have it, to do it on. Also, I think we've discussed it already. I came on a bit too hard. Like the year ended, the new one started, and I was like, "Hey,
fuck my old
work. This is me. Live with it. Deal with it." And it wasn't like a gradual change. It was just like, bam, that's it. Deal with it. So,
well, I think there's one time I remember. I mean, I couldn't afford, or maybe. Couldn't afford is not the right way to put it, but I think I wasn't bold and brave enough like you were to make that rupture in my tattooing approach. But when it comes to Flash, I did have that one moment which happened I think in 2018, and but ever since there's been evolution in my work. I feel like if you take things from today and compare them, you can see who I became, but things still coexist next to one another. So I think even if you another time have a departure, like a radical departure from what you're doing right now, I think you're setting the mood for what is to come in terms of there's no continuity here. It's either now what you're doing kind of organically evolves into something, and then you don't have to do again such a heavy break, or people will just get used that that's your MO. Every now and then you just have like 180-degree change and you deal with it, you know?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it has to do with communication. I have the feeling you have an unspoken agreement with your audience. They accept you evolving and you changing and you being inspired and motivated by different things for as long as you like walk that way with them. I think in all these, perhaps not even the fact that you came out that strong, it's not even maybe the fact that you try to not have a compromise when it comes to your own work. It's which later on I think you kind of adjusted, saying like, hey, I'm still open to doing it, or I'm open to visiting all designs in my new style, and then just letting you choose if you want the original old one or you want the new one. But I think it was more this necessary process of just closing yourself and testing and experimenting until you knew like that's what I want to do, and then just coming out like with that explosion. I think it has to do more with documenting the process and the experimentation, and I think then people feel like they're walking that way
they're
with
part
you.
of it, yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, that I came out so strong that I also showed you. I got an email from a client I tattooed before, and this was still in the beginning when I changed my stuff, and he specifically mentioned, and I think I got this twice, that like, I really like your old stuff. Your new stuff is kind of scaring me. But I mean, like yesterday, for example, I tattooed one of my new designs on someone, and the reaction when it was done just reminded me of like my first days of tattooing. Like really, like just really stoked about the tattoo and the detail that was in it, and like really happy. And having that reaction from the clients, I think, is always like a cool.
But
like,
there's
doing something right.
there's you can try and rationalize it and hyper explaining it. It doesn't make any sense. You don't have any other option to just stay true to what moves you and motivates you. And if you start feeling, for whatever reason, with a good reason or not behind it, that you're getting detached from and disconnected from your own work, you have to change something. Otherwise, you stay just running on autopilot and being, having a cynical approach and that people can smell, and especially nowadays that there's so many tattooers and everyone has their own voice. I think there's no excuse to not be doing exactly what you would like to be doing, and that's what I see when I see really good tattooers that do like random tattoos and then they're amazing painters. I go like, dude, you should be trying to find a bridge between your painting practice and your tattoo practice. No, dude, these cannot be tattoo because tattoo should be that, and that. I feel like there's something in the chamber, but you're hungry. I really need to go pee. I know there's not a lot of solid plans yet, but do you have in a broad brushstroke an idea of what comes now, career-wise?
Not really. But first I'm gonna be moving to Spain, and then it's not in a city, it's outside of the city, so hopefully I can travel to Barcelona every now and then, do some work there. But the main idea is to just do a monthly guest spot in different cities throughout Europe, because Europe is super small and easy to get to. So yeah, hopefully I can also come back to Berlin as often as possible. Yeah.
Any fucking time. To wrap these up, we've gotten pretty emotional this week on socials, kind of coming out with the news that you're gonna be leaving. I think I said my piece. You've said your piece. So I know how you feel. You know how I feel. It's been the closest thing to being a tattoo father that I could get, and I couldn't be prouder of who you are and more excited to see who the fuck you're gonna become.
Thank you.
Every day we spent together has been inspiring, and I think we're crossing that line in which, I'm learning more from you than you're learning from me. So I cannot wait to see us both being old and complaining about the new generation and all the things
Already
that
starting.
Yes. I cannot wait for in 6 months when we behave like two old ladies just drinking tea and complaining. Thanks for taking the time for this, and thanks for being a part of my life.
Thank you. Thank you for everything.
We made it.
Put